Hello, glad you can join us. Here's what's happening. Smoke signal in St. Peter's Square.
They've been locked in until they come up with a new pope.
No consensus yet among the Cardinals.
There will be further military retaliation.
Hostile nuclear powers bordering on war.
The active search efforts to locate Lily and Jack will be scaled back.
Plus, heartbreaking decision in the hunt for 2 missing kids.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Black smoke billowed from a chimney above the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City, signaling no consensus yet on the man who will replace Pope Francis. More than 100 cardinals are sequestered, locked away from the outside world with one job to do: elect a new pope. CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin is in Vatican City and watching today's first important round of voting. Geneviève.
Yes, Andy, it was a bit longer than experts had predicted. There was so much anticipation here at St. Peter's Square.
In a world of high-tech telecommunications, eyes turned to smoke signals. Black, indicating no choice was made. The Cardinals will return to the task of selecting the man who will be Pope. The conclave began after a solemn procession into the Sistine Chapel, when Cardinals swore an oath and famous words were spoken.
Extra omnes.
Meaning out everyone. The 133 voting Cardinals are now cut off from the world. The day began with a mass. Cardinals from 70 countries, the most diverse group in history, including 4 from Canada, prayed for the help of the Holy Spirit. So that, said Cardinal Giovanni Battista, the Pope elected may be the one the Church and humanity need at this difficult and complex time in history. Father John Perdue from Ontario is studying in Rome. Back in 2013, when Pope Francis was chosen, he was a seminarian at St. Augustine in Scarborough.
Excitement is definitely contagious. Like, you can feel it. In the seminary, people were yelling in the halls, "White smoke, white smoke."
Now he's at Sant'Agostino in Rome, awaiting that same smoke.
There's many people, like I say, who wish they were here, so I'm trying to sort of, carry them in my heart.
The Cardinals have returned to their living quarters at Santa Marta for the night, knowing now who has gotten more votes.
They caucus, they talk, and they think, which of these do I think would make the best Pope?
4 secret ballots can be held per day as of tomorrow, until the crowd at St. Peter's Square sees white smoke.
Since 1939, there hasn't been a conclave that has lasted more than 3 days. But of course, we have very few clues as to what's going on the inside. Sandy.
For sure. Okay, thanks, Jen. CTV Geneviève Beauchemin. A major escalation between 2 nuclear-armed neighbors. Pakistan and India appear to be on the brink of war. It is the most volatile situation in years, intensified after an attack on tourists, which India blames on Pakistan, and then came the retaliation. CTV's Abigail Beeman now on the danger brewing between 2 hostile nations. Abigail.
Sandy, the death toll has now hit 38. Pakistan says at least 26 civilians were killed, and India says at least a dozen were killed by Pakistani shelling. Early this morning, India launched a series of missile strikes in Pakistan and Pakistan-controlled Kashmir. Panic spread and we were told to leave, says this witness. Pakistan claimed it shot down 5 Indian warplanes, while the Prime Minister called India's strikes an act of war and vowed retaliation.
Crossing the international boundary, this is the clear-cut violation and invitation to expand the conflict.
India claims it only targeted militants. The overall death toll now in the dozens, with casualties on both sides. Tensions began after India blamed Pakistan for supporting a deadly tourist attack on the Indian-controlled side of disputed Kashmir, which Islamabad denied. It's the biggest escalation between the 2 nuclear-armed neighbors in decades.
There have definitely been fears when mediation's taken place. One of the dangers now is that there's no real mediator to step up.
The Canadian government already had advisories in place for India and Pakistan, telling travelers to exercise a high degree of caution. In the last 24 hours, it issued updates, warning the airspace may close over India and already has over Pakistan, and the situation could deteriorate rapidly.
Good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
This all unfolding in one of the most dangerous and populous regions in the world. The Indian Prime Minister has yet to speak publicly. One expert tells CTV News if Narendra Modi believes his point was made and India appears like a major power, it may be a hope for de-escalation. Sandy?
CTV's Abigail Beeman. Now, one day after Mark Carney met face-to-face with Donald Trump, Canada's Prime Minister briefed the premiers and territorial leaders today on what was discussed and where things stand. CTV's senior political correspondent Mike LeCouture briefs us now on how that conversation went. Hi, Mike.
Well, Sandy, a day after the historic meeting in the Oval Office, the Prime Minister is getting high praise from premiers for how it went.
I don't think I'd have the restraint that he had yesterday, to be very frank.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford applauded Prime Minister Carney for what he called a successful meeting in Washington. In a 75-minute call between the premiers and the Prime Minister today, Ford says there was a sense of unity amongst the leaders.
I was pretty blunt. I said, you know, it's time that your government starts showing some love to Saskatchewan and Alberta, because as I said, like, the last Prime Minister showed no love. Matter of fact, to the contrary.
But that unity is being tested in Alberta, where Premier Danielle Smith has spoken about a referendum on separation. On CTV's Power Play with Vashi Kapelos, Smith said she wouldn't stand in the way of secession.
What I have said is that I will respect the outcome of citizen-initiated referenda, and that's why it's my job to make sure it doesn't get to that point.
Premier Ford said Carney asked premiers to give him a list of 5 priorities on large national infrastructure projects. Ford says it's time to build pipelines across the country using Ontario steel, a sentiment echoed by Alberta's premier, but she's watching the Prime Minister's next move.
This is something that we will get an indication of very quickly, of whether or not he's willing to turn the page on the past 10 years and move forward in a different direction. And I'm hopeful that he does. I think it would be nation building, and I think it would be unifying.
Now, the work to keep all of the premiers on the same page will continue at the next First Minister's meeting in Saskatchewan on June 2nd. And the Prime Minister's office confirms Carney will be there. Sandy?
All right, thank you, Mike. Now, judging by his tone in person and on social media, Donald Trump seemed satisfied with his first meeting with Mark Carney, despite holding fast on tariffs. Today, the U.S. president swore in his new ambassador to China amid the simmering trade war with that country. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon is here with us now. Okay, Joy, this ongoing standoff between China and U.S. and the global economy hanging in the balance. So what did Donald Trump have to say about it all today?
Well, Sandy, Donald Trump still has no intention of dropping his tariffs, not for Canada and not for China. As you said, the president swore in his new ambassador to Beijing today. U.S. and Chinese officials will actually begin talking this week in Switzerland to try to de-escalate their trade war. This after Trump took a hard line, imposing a whopping 145% import tax on Chinese goods. Here's the president.
We were losing $1 trillion a year. Now we're not losing anything, you know? That's the way I look at it. We were losing with China on trade $1 trillion a year. More, actually, 1.1. But let's say $1 trillion. You know what we're losing now? Nothing. That's not bad.
An interesting note, Joy, that moves us a bit away from tariffs. China's president has arrived in Moscow for talks with Vladimir Putin and to attend Russia's Second World War victory celebration. So why has that piqued Donald Trump's interest?
Well, yeah, I mean, China's President Xi Jinping will be the guest of honor at Russia's May 9th Victory Day military parade. And it's a strong showing of unity after Trump's America First trade war upended global relationships. Now, Trump sounded a little left out today. So we saw that he signed a proclamation designating Thursday, tomorrow, to commemorate World War II victory. Have a listen.
I noticed France, I noticed other countries all getting ready for Victory Day. And I said, that's sort of strange, because David just added something. He said, we also rebuilt the world.
You won't see military hardware like that in Russia. That will happen in Washington on Flag Day, June 14th, which also happens to be President Trump's birthday. Sandy?
All right, Joy, as always, thank you. Now, on the issue of tariffs, something almost every sector is adjusting to, whether it's automobiles or energy and everything in between, and that includes producers of toys. The industry is already warning that consumers will be paying more because of supply chain issues. CTV's Heather Wright now on the potential problems coming down the pike. Heather.
Well, Sandy, the holiday shopping season is still 6 months away, but toy manufacturers and the stores that sell those toys are already bracing for a rocky and more expensive Christmas. Retailers in the United States have been warning it's a matter of weeks until shoppers see empty shelves at big box stores. And while it might not be as imminent here in Canada, retailers are already seeing an increase in both prices and demand.
We have been noticing that prices are starting to go up. We're starting to see increases from 10 to 20% from some of our suppliers. Not everybody, but it's definitely coming, and we're kind of anticipating more.
Some toy manufacturers are trying to shift production out of China to avoid Donald Trump's punishing 145% tariffs. But it's not easy to get factories up and running quickly, especially for toys that have intricate or complicated designs. And while the trade war is being waged by the United States, the impact is being felt globally, with companies canceling both orders and container ship bookings. Insiders predict the price of toys will rise sharply over the next several months due to a decrease in supply.
Physical toys that require the supply chain behind it are going to suffer for sure.
Mattel, the maker of Barbie, warned yesterday it will have to hike prices because of the trade war. Many retailers say they are trying to increase their orders now to get ahead of any supply chain disruptions. But for small businesses that don't have endless cash flow, that can be hard. And so they are forced to wait and see how this trade war plays out. Sandy.
Okay, CTV's Heather Wright. 4-year-old Jack Sullivan and 6-year-old Lily Sullivan are still missing, said to have wandered off last week from their Nova Scotia home while their mother and stepfather slept. Today, an update from the RCMP. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth was listening in. And Paul, what did police say today about those missing kids?
Sandy, it's a disheartening development in the search for 2 Nova Scotia children who went missing in this community 6 days ago.
Based on the experts and the review of the facts, the inclement weather, the time frames, and their age, the likelihood that they're alive right now is very low.
6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan were last seen at this property on Friday morning. The massive search has included the RCMP, more than 140 ground search and rescue workers, 3 helicopters, and multiple drones, scouring 4 square kilometers of heavy wooded rural terrain. 2 vulnerable missing persons alerts have also been issued. It appears the children have disappeared without a trace, leading into today's announcement by the RCMP.
As of today, May 7th, the active search efforts to locate Lily and Jack will be scaled back.
It's devastating news for the family, who have been holding out hope for the past 6 days that Jack and Lily would be found.
100 days isn't enough. A whole lifetime isn't enough for them. I just want to find them.
The RCMP considers all missing persons files to be suspicious, and the Major Crime Unit will continue its investigation into what happened to these 2 small children.
We are constantly reviewing everything that's been done, looking at all different facets of available information, and we'll make decisions on that. I can't really comment on the details of that, but we will pursue every lead that becomes available and take it to where it needs to go.
A scaled-back search means ground search and rescue operations will cease as of today. Pictou County RCMP will handle all search operations going forward, and they will only resume those operations based on new evidence that could be presented in the future. Sandy.
CTV's Paul Hollingsworth. A second defense lawyer at the sexual assault trial of 5 former World Junior hockey players began cross-examining the complainant today. The lawyer for Carter Hart questioned how much the woman had to drink at Jack's bar in June of 2018. In court, the defense said, "So it would surprise you," and I'm quoting now, "to learn that there's maybe half as much alcohol in a Jack's Jagger bomb than you normally get." The woman replied, quoting now, that does surprise me. I thought it would be kind of the same everywhere. The woman says she had 8 of those drinks and several others on the night before the alleged assault took place in a London, Ontario hotel room. All 5 men are charged with sexual assault. Michael McLeod faces a second charge of party to the offense. They all have pleaded not guilty. Coming up, good luck sneaking past this inspection.
And his duties are to detect
what these dogs are tracking down and keeping out. A Filipino food and music festival in Ottawa has been postponed because of safety concerns. The event was called off less than 2 weeks after 11 people were killed in a vehicle ramming attack at a Vancouver Filipino festival. The first ever Fun Philippines Ottawa Food and Music Street Festival was scheduled for the May long weekend. Now, in a move aimed at making life easier for consumers, new tipping and price display rules are coming into effect in Quebec. Starting today, suggested tips on a debit machine or bill will be on the amount before taxes. Merchants will also have to make tipping options clearly visible to the customer. And British Columbia is taking steps to sniff out invasive mussels and keep them out of the province.
He's highly intelligent, but focused on work.
This is Major, an 8-year-old German Shepherd. He can detect the smell of mussels where conservation officers can't even see them. Invasive mussels have been located in other parts of Canada and the U.S. and can be destructive and costly. The province also introduced legislation that says boats being transported on trucks have to stop at inspection points. Still ahead, communities under threat and bracing for a summer of extreme risk. New research claims to reveal the disproportionate role played by wealthy countries when it comes to causing climate extremes. A study in the Nature Climate Change Journal says 2/3 of global heating since 1990 is caused by the world's richest 10%. Heating is what drives drought and heat waves in the poorest parts of the world. Previous studies have shown how the wealthiest produce an outsized amount of greenhouse gases, but this study breaks down the actual impact on global climate. Now, wildfire season is just getting started in Western Canada, and the forecast is predicting extreme conditions across most of the region. Several communities have already enacted full fire bans. CTV's Alex Carpa spent the day with firefighters north of Winnipeg to see how they're getting ready for the challenge.
Matlock Fire responding to Page.
Seth Johnson answers the phone. He has received a report of a grassland fire.
Okay, guys, we have a grass fire at 96 North and 15 East.
Johnson acts quickly. He puts on his gear, grabs his radio, walks to the truck, and heads to the scene of the fire, knowing he has no time to waste.
We've got a high preparedness level. We've set everything up for our grass fire units.
Playing out a real call as a simulation, an exercise he practices often. Johnson, who is the fire chief in Matlock, Manitoba, says he and his crew always have to be prepared.
We've got a 300-liter quad tank on our side-by-side system, and we hold about 10 water packs, kind of like little super soakers with kind of 50 liters or so on the back of them.
Wildfire season already making its mark in Western Canada, with BC and parts of the prairies seeing recent heat waves and ongoing dry conditions. Residents on some First Nations communities in Manitoba and Saskatchewan were even forced to evacuate their homes. These often unpredictable fires is something Casey Hope is all too familiar with.
Grasslands are intense, and so they're quick and they're fast, and with winds, it can be quick. It can be dangerous really quick.
And the rise in fires is a concerning trend for some.
We're seeing fire season starting earlier, lasting longer, and becoming more intense, driven by the climate crisis.
Several communities across Western Canada have enacted full fire bans, which Johnson hopes people will follow.
It's dry, don't burn. Simple as that.
The forecast from the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System shows most of Western Canada is facing high to extreme risk of wildfires. Alex Carpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
And several other provinces are dealing with wildfires. Near Badger, Newfoundland, crews are working to put out flames, while in Alberta, several communities are under threat. A wave of evacuation orders forced hundreds out of their homes in different parts of the provinces. Strong winds fueled the flames. There are at least 20 active wildfires, 3 of them burning out of control, with hot and dry conditions expected to persist.
Coming up, I'm Allison Bamford in Kindersley, Saskatchewan.
It felt like I was on fire.
One woman's plea for others to get the jab after contracting a serious case of the measles.
And if I would have been a less healthier person, I might not be here today.
That story coming up.
A Saskatchewan woman never imagined she'd get the measles, but a severe case of the disease put her in the hospital, and now she's sharing her story to encourage others to get vaccinated. CTV's Allison Bamford spoke to the woman as she recovers at home. And Allison, tell us what she said.
Well, Sandy, behind me is where Michelle Knorr spent 4 days in hospital, largely isolated, treated for sepsis, high blood pressure, and hepatitis, all a result of contracting the measles.
It felt like I was on fire.
The 55-year-old started feeling sick last week, flu-like symptoms, then the telltale rash.
I just kept on thinking it was the worst flu bug I had ever had in my life. And once the rash hit, I knew it was a problem.
She was taken by ambulance from a hospital in Kindersley to Saskatoon. She's one of about a dozen measles cases in the province this year. The latest data shows more than 1,600 cases across the country this year, Ontario seeing the most, followed by Alberta. Last year, all of Canada recorded fewer than 150 cases.
This dwarfs what we've seen over the past decade.
Canadians born before 1970 are assumed to have acquired natural immunity. Knorr, born in 1969, is a bit of an outlier.
This is largely an infection in people who were born after 1970. And usually in younger cohorts who are not immune.
Knorr believes she contracted the disease while substitute teaching. She's back home resting, her body once covered in blotches, now faintly peppered.
You can see the remnants of where it was.
But it could be weeks before she feels like herself again. Knorr falls under the age group that only received a single dose of measles vaccine before a second dose became routine in 1996. For those with just one dose, doctors do recommend getting a second if you're traveling anywhere with an outbreak. And if you're not sure, consult a healthcare professional. Sandy?
Good advice, Allison. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Your local CTV News is coming up, and we'll see you tomorrow, we hope. Bye for now.